Spoiler warning for all of Vinland Saga. If you are not caught up on the manga and want to avoid spoilers, then please exit this video and save it for a later date. You have been warned. So I read all of Vinland Saga. I've been slowly collecting the series since March 2022, and I recently got books 12 and 13. Bringing me up to date with the series. At the time of me writing the script for this video, it's been a day since I finished book 13, and I have a lot of thoughts on pretty much everything. Originally, I wanted this to be a series going over each arc video by video, but now I've decided to just make the series into one video. I'm mainly going to talk about the themes the series explores, but I also want to discuss how the series will end. There will be timestamps in the description and comments if you want to jump around or go to a specific topic, and be sure to let me know what you thought about the series and what themes you noticed. So without further ado, let's talk about the first theme. The first theme to discuss is fathers and sons. Yukimura is a father himself, so I imagine this theme deeply resonates with him. There are 4 prominent father-son dynamics in the beginning arc: Thors and Thorfinn, Aske-ladd and Thorfinn, Ragnar and Canute, and lastly King Sweyn and Canute. Oddly enough, Thorfinn and Canute's relationships are completely reversed. Thor's is a kind biological father whom Thorfinn misses and wants to avenge, and Aske-ladd is the ruthless father figure whom Thorfinn rejects and later realizes just how much of a deep impact he had. Meanwhile, Canute accepts Ragnar as his true father figure since Ragnar truly cares and wants the best for him, and on the other hand, he rejects his biological father, King Sweyn, who tried to kill him multiple times and obviously doesn't care for him. It's an interesting reflection of both characters, and one I didn't put together until very recently. After the death of Thorfinn seeks revenge against Aske-ladd, becoming arguably just as cold-hearted as his nemesis. It's only after Aske-ladd's death and some development in the next arc that we see Thorfinn take his father's words to heart and transform into the man Thors wanted his son to be, a kind, compassionate man who doesn't seek violence, a man who has no enemies. On the other side of the coin, you have Canute, who starts off as a timid, kind prince thanks to Ragnar's teachings, but when his chosen father figure is murdered, he's sent into a spiral of death and depravity, slowly becoming a reflection of the man he hates. These ideas will continue to play out throughout the series, but I find them to be such a compelling theme. I think we can all relate to at least one of these dynamics in some way, whether that's a biological connection like Thor's or Sweyn, or a chosen father figure connection like Ragnar and Aske-ladd. The Farmland arc introduces 4 new dynamics: Gramps and Snake, Gramps and Kettle, Kettle and Omar, and lastly Kettle and Thorgil. Let's start with Kettle and his sons. To better understand their dynamic, I think we should look into Kettle's mentality. After reluctantly punishing a slave, Kettle tells Arnheid that the legend of the Iron Fist of Kettle is a lie. He made it up to protect what was his, since a Norseman cannot survive as a coward. He despises violence, yet his lies have led his children astray. Thorgil terrifies Kettle because of his ferocity. Omar is narcissistic, believing he can be a great warrior just like his father and that everything should be handed to him. Kettle's lies have done more harm than good. His lies also created a divide between him and his own father. It's pretty clear that there's a divide between them. Gramps doesn't approve of the use of slaves or the occupation of the guests. It's why he treats Thorfinn and Einar with some level of respect. He allows them to use his tools, eat meals with him in exchange for labor. Just when Arnheid and Garter try to escape, he actively helps the group, even in his deteriorating state. The last father-son dynamic is Gramps and Snake. From the outside, it looks like the two hate each other, but the more interactions we see between them, the more we see that they actually care for each other on some level. When Gramps cooks food, there's enough for both of them. When Gramps is weak, Snake reads the Bible to him. When Gramps collapses in his field, Snake rushes to help him. It's arguable that last example was just to stop Kettle from freaking out on Snake, but I truly do believe that the 2 characters care for each other. The war in the Baltic Sea would introduce 2 new father-son dynamics: Halfdan and Sigurd, and Floki and Baldur. Both relationships play with the idea of what a parent wants for their child. Halfdan is the kind of parent who wants their child to find what makes them happy in life and what they truly want, even if he doesn't say it. His actions speak for him. At first, Sigurd wants to make his father proud. not really thinking about what he wants. It's only after the war is over and one of his friends plants the question in his head that he really thinks about what he wants. On the other hand, Floki is the type of parent figure who decides for their child what they will grow up to be. If he were a father in the modern age, he would be one of those who gets upset if their child is a doctor or a lawyer. He's starting a war all for a child who doesn't even want to be a ruler. I found both dynamics to be interesting, even though these archetypes are nothing new. The last father-son dynamic introduced in the Vinland arc is Thorfinn and Karli. While this dynamic was introduced in the previous arc, I think it really shines in the Vinland arc. It's very heartwarming to see Thorfinn be the type of father Thor's was. A kind man who teaches his son to apologize when they're in the wrong, and one who doesn't use violence as a first resort. Just seeing those moments between the two characters has made me shed a tear quite a few times. It just feels like Thorfinn is finally living after everything he's been through. The second theme to discuss is that of religion. Now I want to preface this portion of the video by saying I am religious, but I'm not going to get all evangelical on you. Rather, I just want to talk about religion as it pertains to the series, and you know as a viewer that I have my own biases and interpretations of what the series explores. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the topic. Books 2 and 3 cover religion quite a bit. We hear of Valhalla, a place of luxury for warriors slain in battle, and we also hear of how places that used to worship Norse gods have been converted to Christian churches, something that actually happened due to social and political pressure in the real world. But I want to draw our focus to chapter 27. The beginning illustration is the first time that a verse from the Bible is used, that verse being in Lamentations chapter 5 verse 20. For context, this book of the Bible was written by the prophet Jeremiah as a prayer for humility, for people who realized their sins and desired forgiveness. But Yukimura uses this verse in an interesting way. The verse states, "Wherefore dost thou forget us forever and forsake us for so long?" I think this verse best suits Canute. Why did God not intervene when Ragnar was murdered? Why would God take away the one person who truly loved and cared for him? Why did God forget them? This event would continue to weigh on Canute, and the beginning illustration of chapter 37 emulates the fall of Adam, echoing Canute's own separation from God, ultimately leading to this statement in chapter 39. "Father, I no longer seek your salvation. If you will not give it to us, then we have no choice but to recreate paradise with our own hands." And with that said, Canute completes his own fall from grace and embarks on a mission to recreate paradise with a trail of blood and steel. Coinciding with the theme of religion is the theme of what is love. The alcoholic priest in Canute's party is obsessed with the concept of love. Two members of aske-ladd's group ask him if their brotherly bond is love, and the priest says no. Canute asks if his bond with Ragnar was love, and he says no. Eventually, he points to a dead body and says that is love. The dead have no desire to kill or steal. No matter the conditions, they won't raise a single complaint. They are eternally at peace. Death itself is love. The only time we see the priest question his own beliefs is when he hears about Thor's, a kind man who did not kill even when his adversaries didn't give him the same treatment. He didn't complain about the conditions in Iceland, and his only wishes were those of peace. Now, I disagree with the priest's interpretation of love, but it is an interesting perspective to say the least, and one that makes me wonder what my interpretation of love is. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this in the comments down below, so be sure to let me know. This theme continues into the farmland arc, specifically when Snake is reading the Bible to Gramps. He reads a passage from Matthew chapter 5. For context, this chapter is Jesus sitting on a mountain teaching his followers a number of lessons, with the last one being about love. The passage goes like this: "You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and good, and sends rain on the righteous and unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing better than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." This gives us another perspective on what love should be. Love shouldn't be only for your loved ones, but also for your enemies. I think that's why Thorfinn finds some interest in this story, one that he takes to heart. He goes on to show compassion towards his enemies like Garm, Floki, and Sigurd, and some would later show compassion towards him. Overall, I find this to be an interesting theme, and the way that Yukimura uses religion doesn't feel forced or too heavy-handed. The fourth theme I wanted to talk about is change, starting with how it's used in the Farmland arc. I want to read off one of the author's notes pertaining to change to best understand Yukimura's thought process. Some things are better off not changing, and some things are better off changed. Personally, I love the process of a boy growing into a man. Every time I have the opportunity to witness someone's growth in life, a long-held doubt surfaces in my mind. Certainly, there are differences in words and actions. But on a fundamental level, basically, I'm looking for the trick that turns you into a really cool adult. I want to solve this doubt and become a super cool grown-up. I wonder if it'll ever happen. Probably not. Yukimura wants to know if people can change on a fundamental level, and we see that reflected in Thorfinn and Olmar. Thorfinn's fundamental growth as a character will continue to be explored throughout the series, but for this arc, we see him go from a lost soul to a man who wants to atone for the wrongs he's committed in life. We only see Olmar's growth in this arc, but I think it's enough for his character. Like I said earlier, he's very narcissistic, always looking for a fight and believing that he'll win. It's only after he kills someone that he truly understands the weight that death carries. It continues to haunt him, and when he sees the devastation that the battle between his father and Canute has caused, he finally breaks. He wants to surrender, and when he witnesses Thorfinn's actions to stop the battle and save the farm, he realizes what true bravery is, and the type of man he wants to strive for. A kind man who doesn't strive for war, but a man who has no enemies. The war in the Baltic arc continues Thorfinn's evolution into the man he aspires to be, with one character questioning his change in behavior, that person being Hildy, and she has a good reason to question whether people can truly change, considering Thorfinn was one of the people who raided her village, which resulted in the death of her family. She believes that people can't change. Once a killer, always a killer. But through an act of her dead father figures, she gives Thorfinn an opportunity to atone for his sins. But should he ever cross the line again, she will kill him then and there. So she follows him for a few years, even helping the settlers of Vinland with some new inventions, just as she did for her old village. And after holding a grudge for so many years and witnessing the acts of Thorfinn, she's able to let go of her anger and forgive Thorfinn, believing he has truly changed. This gives closure to not only Thorfinn, but to Hildy as well, resulting in one of my favorite moments in the manga. I personally think people have the power to change if they approach the issue with sincerity and honesty. Some people will act like they've changed to retain what clout they have, but those who are serious about it can change. It will take a lot of work, as we see with Thorfinn, but it is possible. The last theme I want to cover is the resentment towards violence. The whole series plays with this concept, but the prologue arc is where the seeds get planted. It all starts in a flashback to Thorfinn's childhood. He states that he needs a weapon. He looks through his father's old things and finds a sword. That's when Thor stops him, explaining that the sword is a weapon for killing. He wants to know who is Thorfinn's enemy. When Thorfinn struggles to come up with an answer, Thor says that he has no enemies. There is no one he should be striving to kill. Unfortunately, Thor's words fall on deaf ears, at least for now. When Thor is murdered, his death sends Thorfinn on a quest for revenge. A quest that his father didn't wish upon him, but one that he chose. He slaughters countless men so that he can duel aske-ladd and have another shot at his revenge. By age 17, he is a killing machine who has no regard for the people he murders, even if they were simple farmers trying to make a living. If aske-ladd wanted them dead, he would make sure it happened. But when aske-ladd is killed by Canute, Thorfinn feels lost. Farmland continues to explore the theme and really begins to show the message Yukimura is trying to get across. Thorfinn is plagued in his sleep with nightmares of him trying to climb out of a pit with the dead clinging to his back. The dead are the men he slaughtered while serving aske-ladd. He can't recognize their faces, but he knows he killed them. A ghost of aske-ladd explained it to him. Aske-ladd was too far gone. There was nothing he could do that would atone for his sins. But Thorfinn still has a chance to atone for what he did. and until he does, the dead will continue to plague him. At first, he doesn't know what he can do to end this curse. He works hard on the farm with Einar towards their freedom, and when it approaches, he doesn't know what he wants to do with his newfound freedom. It's only after the death of Arneid that his sense of purpose is restored. He wants to create a nation free of slavery, a land that transcends death, and Einar agrees to help him build this dream of his and turn it into a reality. I think having the main character resent violence is such a refreshing idea in the world of manga and even comics as a whole. Sure, it's not a brand new idea, but with so many titles having the main character be excited to fight a villain, Vinland Saga manages to stand out because of this resentment. I think it's also a testament to Yukimura as a brilliant writer for being able to tell a story that hates war, shows the ugliness of war, and makes it so compelling. I believe anyone who's looking to make their own anti-war story should take some notes from this series. In this last section of the video, I want to talk about the future of this series. This will mainly be theory crafting based on the actual Vinland Sagas, so if you're worried about potential spoilers for the ending of the series, then skip ahead to the timestamp you see on screen. You have been warned. So in book 13, we see the shaman have the vision of the future of America, the Civil War, slavery, nuclear weapons, etc. This gives him a reason to want to kick the Nords out of Vinland, and I believe he'll get some of the other natives to follow suit. In the real-life Vinland Sagas, the Nords traded gifts with the natives, one of which was dairy products that resulted in the natives getting sick. They believed the Nords had tried to poison them, and so war broke out, which resulted in Thorfinn fleeing back to Iceland shortly after Gudrid gave birth to their child. I think something similar will happen in the manga. The natives, now having a reason to chase off the Nords, will try to do so, but Ivar will want to fight back, resulting in the battle between the two groups. Gudrid will give birth to their child, and the Nords will flee to Iceland. Thorfinn will either die trying to make peace with the natives, or he'll live and make it back to Iceland with the rest of the group. The reason I throw in the potential of Thorfinn's death is because he's nearly the same age as the real-life Thorfinn, who died at age 23 or 27. His actual birth year has conflicting reports. It could also be poetic to have Thorfinn die in a similar way to his father, but I do think his survival is probably more believable. Now, if Yukimura does go this way with the story, I think it'll be controversial whether or not Thorfinn dies. To have all this build up towards Vinland only for it to be ripped away from the characters and the readers will result in some sort of shell shock. But personally, I wouldn't mind it. To me, Vinland isn't the main goal, but rather a means to the goal of redeeming Thorfinn. Will it be sad to see Arneid village go up in flames? Of course it will, but I don't think the ending will ruin the story. It will actually do the opposite for me personally, and if I'm wrong and the Nords manage to make peace with the natives, even better. Either way, I'm interested to see how Yukimura handles the ending and how Vinland Saga will come to a close. And those are my thoughts on the themes I noticed in Vinland Saga, as well as where I think this series is going to go. But these are just my thoughts. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on the series in the comments below, and where you think this series is going to go. I want to thank you so much for watching, and if you're new to the channel, then consider subscribing. I make a lot of manga content when I actually upload it, as well as some comic book content like DC and Marvel. So if you're interested in that stuff, then consider sticking around. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!